Thank you. Unmute. We're ready. You're live.
Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to this, which is actually going to be the last Prim Perfect talk in the auditorium at SL10B Community Celebration. Wow, the week seems to have gone so fast, it seems no time at all since we were raising the flags and I was rushing inside to do my very first talk with the mesh makers. And now we're coming to an end, which is sad, but also a relief. It's been a very busy week. So, welcome all of our audience to this talk on SteamPunk, and I'm joined by two prominent residents of the SteamLands, Garnet Saltry and Victor Mornington. Victor, who we refer to as the assistant maceholder of Babbage, a title to which a tale is attached, which we may get round to telling, and Garnet, who is also plays a character in The Quest for the Golden Prim, which has an exhibit just a little way away from here, which is has been a very popular and exciting exhibit. So, welcome to the platform, both of you. Maybe you would like to expand a little on what you're up to in the SteamLands.
Would you like to go first, Vic?
Oh yeah, right, choose me. What I'm up to in the SteamLands, everything I'm up to in the SteamLands is always good things, because I'm always innocent, and if you're not in New Babbage you won't get the in-joke. But mostly, for me in the SteamLands, at least in New Babbage, I usually take it day to day. New Babbage, just like a lot of the SteamLand regions out there, is not 100% roleplay. It's not like some of the other roleplay places out there where you have to be 100% roleplay all the time. The good thing about New Babbage, in fact, the good thing about almost all of the SteamLand regions out there, is you can just drop in, relax, visit, and you can roleplay if you want. Most of my time in New Babbage is mostly taken up with lazing around and being lazy, which is something I'm really good at, yes.
Do you want me to disagree on that, Vic?
Apart from running a very successful and popular hotel, building quite a bit, and being the assistant maceholder, really.
Yeah, being lazy, in other words.
Do you know, I absolutely don't understand that. You seem to have a finger in every pie.
No, I don't. I'm completely innocent.
Completely innocent. Yes, if you say so.
So, Garnet, you actually have fingers in different Steamland pies, don't you?
Mostly I'm in New Babbage, which rather suits me because it is very gritty. It's supposed to be a northern industrial town, which given my own real life background is very suitable. But I do I do get about the other Steamlands as well. I spent my first Steamland years in Caledon and wound up in Babbage more recently, and I also spent time in Steelhead, plus a few other places. I really am spread everywhere. I do have a real life. It's just I'm just here more than I am out there.
Right.
Which is really because the Steamlands are so interesting. You get such a variety of people and interests. You get extremely talented builders, and I just love spending time amongst them and learning from them.
So, would you say that the different Steamlands have different ethoses? can they be distinguished pretty easily?
I would say so, yes. Perhaps not so much from a visitor's point of view, but there are differences. As I've said, New Babbage is very down to earth. It prides itself on its soot and its steam and smog and a fairly dangerous way of life, perhaps. Caledon is prettier, I'd say. A little bit more open, I think, a lot more greenery. And I think a little bit more snooty as well. You get more titles there, shall I say?
Yes,
I'm going to get hit for that. Caledon has more fantasy. And Steelhead is a fascinating mix. It's a representation of perhaps parts of Oregon. Very, very beautiful in parts, and there's a part to the north which is more towards Edgar Allan Poe, that kind of aspect. They do have very, very different, a different feel to themselves, and I really recommend you just go and see them.
yes, it is part of Caledon's charm, I think. The other part of Steelhead that I find fascinating is Chinatown. The whole Steelhead, Shanghai. Yeah.
That is wonderful. Yes. Even within that small group of Sims, you have a tremendous variety. The builds, which are done largely by Total Lunar Eclipse and Tensai Hilra, I think show a very, very high standard. Well worth seeing, and really good for photographs. If you want something for the background, just go there. You'll find something to suit you.
Yes, we use Steelhead as the quester's first destination in the quest for the Golden Prim, and that was that made for some stunning sets, even before we blew up the volcano.
Oh yes, even before the volcano.
Yeah, and they were extremely helpful in blowing up the volcano for us and that. Yeah, Tensai just loved the fact we wanted the volcano to blow up, that she had an excuse for blowing it up.
So she does get quite keen on things exploding. Yes.
She does, yes. I remember one year at Relay for Life they had a perfectly splendid tower, and I think it was the beginning of their Nevermore build. They had a kind of Alice in Wonderland plus a huge tower. And at the end, Tensai blew up the tower. And someone came along and said, oh, you've blown it up. Oh, I missed it. She said, no, it's all right. I'll do it again.
Of course. Why waste a good explosion?
And she did it several times, yeah.
There are other SteamLands, of course. I don't know them so well, but perhaps Vic does. I'm just thinking of, where are we? We've got Meeville, and I think Witchwoods is included in the SteamLands as well, but I might be wrong about that.
I'm more strict when it comes to tagging something with SteamPunk. I'm a little bit more strict. To me, Caledon isn't SteamPunk. To me, Caledon is pure Victorian. The lands to the north of Caledon, though, which I can't remember the name of, which is a totally separate entity.
Winterfell.
Winterfell, there we go. I would sort of class that as steampunk, but it's the problem with the designation of what makes steampunk.
Steampunk, which I think we ought to get on to.
Do we have to? It will just cause a big argument.
I was going to say, I think you could say that it's true of the southern areas of Winterfell, like Winterfell Absinthe and Winterfell Laudanum, are definitely have definite steampunk elements. But I think when you get to the older northern Winterfell, it's much more medieval, and sort of dark medieval. It kind of drifts through history as it moves south. And then, of course, you have homesteads like Eleanor Anderton's, which are just beautiful and very hard to define because she's very much Victorian, but I wouldn't say particularly steampunk, and it's just a gorgeous place.
Yes, perhaps we ought to start trying to define it.
Yeah, and I would say that some of Caledon is more steampunk than others. Things like Steam Sky City.
Yes, and also in the events that they hold. Quite often you'll find in the role play that there is more reference to slightly more fantastistical things, given some sort of scientific background. Well, I've never quite got to grips with cavorite, which if people don't know is a substance that defies gravity, so you can have floating houses with no visible means of support. It's just this green substance that keeps you afloat.
I think there's cavorite in the foundations of my Caledon house because it has to be attached to the ground by a chain.
Oh, it's wonderful! It's wonderful, your little house. It really is worth seeing. And which is that in Penzance, Caledon Penzance?
That's in Penzance, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it's my little bolt hole. Yeah. And of course, it's also the much reduced offices of the Primgraph. Because the Primgraph used to be a magazine and had large offices in Caledon. Oh gosh, what's it called? Not Gallifrey, Glengarry. Caledon Glengarry, that's right. We had large offices there that were based on the Oxford University Press, to the extent that when my husband, who is an ex-OUP employee, saw it, he kind of said, that's... and was reduced to gasps of to gasping. Ed Pierce built that for me, and then when the Primgraph ceased publication and became just a blog, we needed somewhere to store the very, very beautiful press that Edward had made, and so it's actually now housed in a shed in Penzance, just at the bottom of my house. Well, it's a sort of it's actually fairly authentic looking. It's a fairly authentic looking shed, so it works. But anyway, let's turn from that and let's actually try and define what steampunk is.
Oh dear.
As far as I know, and you may want to correct me on this, it was a term first used by the Castle Falkenstein game to express an ethos that was like Cyberpunk's vision of the future, but it was a kind of parallel vision of a Victorian future, if you see what I mean. The sort of heavily influenced by things like Jules Verne. And that was its
pretty much correct,
origin.
Yes. It really is, well, from my point of view, and I know other people have slightly different points of view, it's a view of the world as a Victorian person might be able to imagine it if they had an interest in science fiction or fantasy. It's whatever the world could have been imagined at, given the technology of the time and the scientific understanding of the time. So that for me pretty much rules out things that could have come later. I mean, I wouldn't drift into the world of diesel punk, for instance, which I know a lot of people are interested in because it reminds them of good old 1930s Flash Gordon and things. But for me, that's too late. It really is it is to do with the time of the later Queen Victoria, and perhaps for American people it would be in the Wild West, the frontier aspect.
Yes, there's some very interesting steampunk that combines, and I think there's even been a few Hollywood movies that have picked up on the steampunk western angle.
Yes, I think those are becoming more popular now.
What about you, Victor? Huh? Sorry, go on. Finish.
No, I was just desperately trying to remember the name of a Kickstarter that I'm supporting called The World of Steam. I'm sure there are more.
Oh, there is a lot. There's a lot of Kickstarter stuff out there to do with steampunk. The World of Steam's probably one of the better known ones. SteamPunk. If you want to look at the traditional basic view of what steampunk is, the whole ethos of steampunk is based around a series of what-ifs. What if, during the run-up to the Victorian era, the inventions that made, well, not so much inventions, the innovations which made the Industrial Revolution happen, what if those innovations were magnified tenfold? What if the inventions that came around because of the Industrial Revolution and because of the Victorian era, what if those inventions were magnified tenfold? What if the Victorian era Industrial Revolution, everything that happened running up to the Industrial Revolution and going into the Revolution, what if everything that happened there had a sort of modern day context? Not much, but just a little bit of a modern day context thrown in and then magnified 10 times. So then you would have steam power. But not steam power as we remember it with locomotives, basically steam power that was able to power every single thing you could possibly think of. Prosthetic arms, for instance, powered by miniature steam engines, that kind of idea. The whole basic, this is the very basic ethos of steampunk, is take the Industrial Revolution, concentrate it down to its bare essentials and magnify all the innovations and all the ethos that surrounded the entire Industrial Revolution and magnify it 10 times over, and that's basically what steampunk is.
Yes, because you can get things like steam-driven computers, and I think somewhere in my inventory I have a steam-driven laptop.
I wouldn't mind how it was powered as long as it worked.
There was an exhibition at the History of Science Museum in Oxford, which was, in fact, the most popular exhibition they've ever staged, and it was on steampunk. And what they actually had was, they said that the objects were in themselves beautiful and extremely well crafted and crafted to last. It's one of the things about the Victorian age and that's something that's probably gone right up till now, is that you don't tend to throw things away when you can and get something new. You would repair. And our culture very much is sort of disposable. I say this feelingly because I've recently had to get a new boiler and a new cooker. But the kind of ethos in steampunk would be more that you would repair it. First of all, it would last a lot longer, but you would repair it and make and build on the existing machine rather than just go, okay, dump it, get a new one.
Oh, absolutely. And whatever you built would look beautiful. I think we miss that these days as well.
Mm. That almost buys into the whole William Morris arts and crafts, doesn't it?
Yes, I agree.
Although William Morris kind of hated machinery and hated industrialisation, I think there's an element of the craftsmanship in steampunk that's very important.
Well, taking the principle that things should be beautiful or useful. Yes, I think he could appreciate that aspect of it.
There's also the aspect of basically everything in the steampunk genre should be over-engineered to its entirety. Like, you know, here's a house. This house can be built with bricks and mortar. But bricks and mortar's not enough. Let's put big iron girders everywhere and just cover it in brass, and to such an extent that you basically can't see the bricks anymore. Over-engineering. Over-engineering, that was...
I know you're a builder, Vic. You can talk about that.
Oh, yes. Over-engineering, that was the thesis, not just in steampunk, but in the Victorian era. Isambard Kingdom Brunel. Every single thing he built is still around today.
Well, not the Great Britain.
No, well, yeah, not the Great Britain, because that was scrapped.
But yeah, his bridges, his tunnels, yeah, his engineering has really survived. I think it was an aspect of Victorian culture in general, wasn't it? I mean, if you look at pictures of Victorian interior design, you know, we try to replicate Victorian rooms and things, certainly in things like television series, but they were so enormously over-decorated. Everything was crammed with decoration and paintings. If you had paintings on your walls, you didn't just hang a few at eye height. The walls would be filled, starting about knee height and going up to the ceiling. And women would spend their days, you know, middle-class women would spend their days doing things like gluing ivy leaves onto vases and then glazing them. And all sorts of things like this, which would then be displayed. Those knickknacks and trinkets and biblios were everywhere. It was crammed. And then there were all the little bits of cloth, the antimacassars that went on the back of chairs. We wouldn't be sitting in chairs like this in Victorian times. There would be a headrest on the back that would protect the leather of the chair from the hair oils that men were using. And because men would be wearing a lot of scented oil on their hair. And then on the arms of the chair there would be armrests, and all of these would be embroidered and crocheted edges and pinprick embroidery on them. An age of the most immense over-decoration.
You know, I think a lot
they
of
wouldn't
the...
have thought
sorry, I think a lot of the expression of creativity within the home reflected the situation of women then, who who might just really have preferred to go out and build engines but weren't allowed to.
But that, of course, is something we can say about steampunk. It's a very egalitarian world.
Oh, absolutely.
And that women can build engines as much as men. There's kind of no prejudice against women or various other creatures, you know. Don't have to be human. Yeah.
Yes. Within Second Life, it is a very, very open and welcoming world. I'm not sure it extends so much out into the real world. I'm thinking of cosplay, where women have an extremely hard time dressing up in character. Perhaps drifting a little bit away from steampunk here, but if you're a woman out in cosplay, you've got to dress in an unrealistic fashion, exposing your assets and pretending to fight in something that would actually get you killed. Otherwise, you earn sharp comment from the males. But within Second Life, I haven't found that the case. Oh, well, it's somewhere you can create, you can build, you can explore, you can feel wonderfully free. I really do thank Second Life for that, and I thank the community for being so open and accepting, and we have such a variety of people, such a diversity of interests and abilities. I think you'd agree with that, Vic.
There's one thing that I've noticed in Second Life. I mean, yesterday I was here along with Saffia for the Doctor Who panel. There is very few communities out there that have lasted for as long as SteamPunk. Doctor Who's one of them, but the Doctor Who community had a very rough time at the beginning. The steampunk community in Second Life it's massive. It is massive. If you compare it against the other genre type communities that you get, like the general genre communities you get, like the cyberpunk community, the diesel punk community, and those, you know, insert word punk type communities. You look at the amount of land that the steampunk community has. You know, if you just take New Babbage, Steelhead, and Caledon, that is a lot of land mass for steampunk fans out there. That is an awful lot of land mass. Throw in Winterfell, because Winterfell's got a lot of land as well. And the thing is, there is no sign of steampunk slowing down in Second Life. There really isn't. It absolutely amazes me, and I've been in New Babbage for more than 4 years now. Yeah, more than 4 years, and I've watched New Babbage, the land of New Babbage, almost double. It just continuously grows.
But it grows at a fairly measured pace, I would say.
Oh yeah.
One of the problems I think I've seen in some communities is that they overextend, that they have a spurt of growth, and they double their landmass, and then they're forced to cut back, and cutting back causes huge ructions in any community because, you know, although some lands that they cut back will be empty, others will have to have people relocating. People who've always had a gorgeous view of the mountain and access to that beach are going to kick and scream if they have to see, you know, and another bit of the landscape they may not find so attractive, etc. And that in itself causes kind of ructions in a community. But certainly somewhere like Babbage has expanded very steadily, but quite slowly. I mean, you know, I don't think Tank has ever gone out and put on 5 new Sims.
Oh no, it's only one sim at a time.
Tank keeps his vision very strong and clear, and he has a very strict attitude towards building. And I think that really is the fundamental success of New Babbage, without bringing down any other SteamLand. I think if you lose sight of your original vision, you are likely to lose some of your residents. And if you lose your original residents, then the people coming in may not appreciate the history of the place. They may not appreciate the ethos. They may not have the same commitment to the place. And that is disruptive. And as you say, if Sims start disappearing, it isn't the place that you knew when you moved in. It's one of the things that again attracts me to New Babbage, apart from its grittiness, which I adore. I mean, I don't know if I can mention what we're building for Relay for Life. Perhaps I shouldn't, but it's at the request of Mayor Tank. When we have our Relay for Life campsite, we are going to have something extremely slimy in the middle. I can promise you, as well as an explosion. I better not say any more. Well, that's coming up, folks. Do come and see it when Relay for Life. When the Sims open, please do come and see New Babbage, because I think you'll adore it. It's very much us. I've completely forgotten what I was saying now.
I think Jasper has raised an interesting point. He says, as successful as New Babbage may be as a city, I'd love to see more people actually in it. Usually I'm the only one in a sim, or a few others. I think this is a perennial problem of Second Life.
It's very much to do with the time of day, I think.
Yeah, it's a lot to do with the time of day. New Babbage is one of those rare instances where you have people living in the major residential areas, and I suppose you could call it the industrial areas on the west side of the city as well, the old Sims, where you've got people living across the globe. I mean, there's at least half a dozen people I know who are living on Australian time. They don't show up during UK time because they're 12 hours ahead of us. There's a lot of people in the UK. There's a very big UK contingent in New Babbage as well, and there's also a massive contingent of people from the United States and Canada. There's people from Japan there as well, but yeah, unlike the other thing as well, Jasper, is New Babbage, and I don't think a lot of people I don't think a lot of people disagree with this. New Babbage, if you compare it to Steelhead or Caledon, New Babbage isn't really a socially type of place. Sure, we've got our parties. Garnet holds parties on a Saturday and me and Edward host parties on a Friday. But if you look at the landmass that New Babbage is and the amount of people that live in New Babbage, not a lot of people turn up. And what you'll find is a lot of people who have land in New... Well, here's a classic example, right? I've been in New Babbage for 4 years. I'm one of the 7 estate managers. There is people who have land in New Babbage that I have never seen for 4 years. 4 years. They have land there, they have buildings there, but I've never seen them. Because they're builders. They build their plot in New Babbage, they set up their home, and they use that as basically their holiday home, because they've got their own major home somewhere else, and they pop into New Babbage maybe 2 or 3 days in the month to pay their tier, catch up with old friends, and then they're off again. New Babbage is well known as a city of builders, because that's what New Babbage is built upon. It's built upon the residents who build the buildings that you're seeing. There is a lot of people in New Babbage, and as an estate admin, and I think Mr. Tenk could probably say the same thing. He's the mayor, he owns it all, and we haven't seen at least a quarter of the people that own plots and buildings there. I haven't personally seen any of them for 4 years, but they still pay their tier. They still show up for the big Christmas events, and they still show up for Piermont Landing every couple of months. You know, and if you look at Steelhead, which is another fantastic area to go, Steelhead is more socially orientated, more so than New Babbage is.
I think one of the things that Steelhead has that draws the community together is the town hall meetings, because they have, not only do they have a big party every Friday, they also have the town hall meetings, I think, on a Tuesday, where everyone goes along and discusses things. I think that each of these communities, if we take these three core communities, has a level of interaction in a quite different way. I would say that Steelhead has the kind of the social thing through the meetings and the parties. I would say that Caledon's measure of social interaction is actually the Caledon chat, which goes on a lot of the time. And I would say that New Babbage, as well in even more than it is on the ground, interacts through its website and those stories that are coming up all the time, that, you know, all the gossip is coming out through the forums and through the website and the blogs on the website, so that you will read role plays and accounts of role plays, some of which have been role played out, but some of which are kind of backstories that are developing and get commented on without anyone actually setting foot in Babbage itself.
That does happen. I prefer to see people involved in role play on the streets if possible. I mean, if only because you get great photos that way. If you only do it on the blog, you lose that sense of interaction. I was going to say something else about Steelhead. I just want to briefly mention, I don't know if people know about Girl Genius, but some of the characters there are represented in Steelhead as well as other places, but mostly there. And I think that gives it another aspect to its character. Well, I know that the writers, the folios, would call it Gaslamp Fantasy rather than Steampunk, but to me it's pretty much the same thing. Controversy. Good.
You're lucky Tank isn't here.
I'll talk to him later. I'll give him some of my tea. I have a tea shop in New Babbage, by the way. There's nothing in it yet, but there will be. Tea and cats.
But it's not. Oh, there's a name I haven't seen for a while.
Joe.
Yeah, Joe Yardley. Hello, Joe.
Hello, Joe.
Another thing is, yeah, I know, made her blush. Another thing as well, which I think is one of the contributing factors as to why Steampunk has got a slow but steady flow of new people popping in, and we touched on this slightly yesterday, Saffia, is because of Doctor Who. Let's face it. We've got to face it. You go to any of the other SteamLands and you will find several Time Lords within draw distance. And it's one of the good things about steampunk, because the steampunk genre as a whole stands out on its own, but it's not the kind of genre that makes people look at it and go, I can't get into that. I mean, I look at cyberpunk, and the cyberpunk genre in SL's a big genre, but I look at cyberpunk and I think to myself, I can't get into that. I don't know how to get into that. But the reason I got into steampunk about 4.5 years ago was because of Ulan Sputnik. And people like Ulan, who were already there. They were already walking around in Caledon and the old New Babbage when Sprocket ran it. And, you know, and I looked at this, I looked at the architecture, I can't even say it, architecture, there we go. And I said to myself, yeah, I can fit into this. I can fit into this, knowing nothing about steampunk at the time. Absolutely nothing. And I thought, yeah, I could live here. I could fit into this community, and I did. And then I bought one single piece of land, and now I basically own 3/4 of a sim.
You certainly do. You certainly do. You are an ambitious man.
To say nothing of being the assistant mace holder.
Oh,
Oh dear.
You're right, though. I mean, people can draw other people in very much. Going back years now, I met Desmond Shang, the owner of Caledon, fairly soon after he arrived, I believe, and I think I really can't remember. I think it was in one of the snow sims, could be Ono, and then later in Alice. He hadn't got anything going then, but I saw him create his first bits of furniture. I think it was a chair and a table, and he then went on to build houses, and then went on to create the first sim, Caledon. With the commitments that I had at the time, I didn't join the community, but I kept in touch, and eventually became a founder member of Caledon Kittiwixshire. Oh gosh, years pass by, and you get involved in a lot of communities, and things happen, and then things like Relay for Life happen to you and burn you out. I did lose a little bit of touch with Caledon then, but I've started going back, and it's so good to see old friends there. People matter in these communities. So even if you're not particularly well versed in science or engineering or technology, you can find yourself surrounded by good friends, and that for me makes the community. It is how people react and interact with each other.
I agree. And yes, I always found it amusing the way that Desmond funded the purchase of the first Caledon sim. That basically he engineered a repeat of the tulip bubble that devastated the Dutch economy in the late 17th century. He basically recreated the tulip bubble and used the money to fund the beginning of Caledon. I love that. I love that he did that. That he created this artificial demand for tulips.
He's still doing it with the roses, I believe.
Yes. Oh, yes. I don't think it has quite the same impact these days, but it did.
No. I don't know where the tulips are now. Has anybody still got them?
I don't know. It was yes, it was Bixley. It's part of history. I mean, this must have been 2005.
Easily,
It was
yes.
pretty early days, and he was well read in his history. I think he probably knew, what is it, popular madness, popular something in the madness of crowds.
Madness,
That
yes,
wonderful,
that would sum it up.
wonderful book.
Oh, Justin says it is in 2006, the Tulip Festival.
2006. Right, but there was...
Thank you, Joe.
Yes. The Extraordinary Popular Delusions and the Madness of Crowds. That's the one. And if you want to know about the original tulip bubble, it's all in there. And the stories of the sailor who ate a priceless tulip, mistaking it for an onion, and all this sort of thing.
Good heavens.
Yes, it was the late 17th century, and it just kind of decimated the Dutch economy. And then it was sort of 50 years later, the same thing happened to the UK economy through the South Sea bubble, where people were investing in the South Seas. And then I think there was a Louisiana plantation one that cripple the French economy. Think dot-com boom and bust. It was pretty much the same thing, but in
it happened up here in Scotland as well. It was the reason the Act of Union came along, the Darien scheme of the early 1700s, when I think his name was Robert Darien, got together this whole Ponzi. Basically, it was a Ponzi scheme. Throw all your money at me, and we will send a bunch of ships over to the New World. And they did, and all the ships sank, and then Scotland was bankrupt, and the English bailed us out, and henceforth the Act of Union. We became Great Britain.
Do you know, I was trying to imagine the same thing happening in Babbage, but I couldn't. Anything that we created would not be edible at all.
Oh no, it wouldn't. It really wouldn't.
Who wants to eat a wiggy fish?
Ew.
It was, Desmond was able to create the tulip bubble in Second Life. He made these tulips, which were sold as limited editions, and people had to have them. And they started changing hands up for vast sums because it became a craze to have a full collection of tulips. He did the whole thing. And the money he raised from selling these limited edition tulips paid for Caledon. Paid for the foundation of Caledon.
Got to hand it to Des. The man's got a lot of good ideas.
That's right.
Very astute businessman. Very astute.
Very astute. And so, that's how it all began. But we ought to say something about the assistant maceholder that I've been teasing Victor with.
Oh dear.
It comes from Designing Worlds. Because with the Designing Worlds show, periodically, for those of you who don't know, we go to New Babbage, and Designing Worlds is usually a very straightforward show. Joe will tell you, because we went to Berlin recently, and we come over and we interview people about the place where they are, and we may do it in character so that we try to pass within our environment. So like when we went to Berlin, we dressed as slightly affluent Berliners.
I couldn't imagine you not being well dressed, Saffia.
Exactly. So we do that kind of thing, and we will blend in. When we go to Babbage, however, although the shows always start off as completely normal shows, and we'll be going to look at an aspect of New Babbage, every time something goes wrong and we find ourselves caught up in investigating a murder or an abduction or some sort of mystery, a jewel theft or something like that, and we will abandon the planned show and get thoroughly involved with whatever mischief is going on. When we did the first one, we based it around a story that Aeolius Cleanslate had written for the Primgraph, a Halloween story, and we decided to adapt it slightly and film it. And Aeolius Cleanslate was still is, I think, the maceholder of New Babbage, yes?
Yep, still is.
Yeah. And so he was very good. We had him as our authority figure, and that all worked beautifully. But when we came to film the second one, we needed the authority figure again. And so we asked Aeolius, could he do it? And he couldn't, he wasn't available. So we asked Victor if he would mind appearing, and he said that he was very happy to. And we needed someone who was a kind of authority figure. So we said, well, okay, Victor, we'd better say that you're the assistant maceholder. Which was fine, and completely unofficial and invented for the show, but really has kind of stuck, hasn't it?
Yeah, and that they're starting to call me the assistant mate. Some of them are starting to call me the assistant mace holder when it comes to RP and New Babbage. That tag has actually stuck now.
I can see
We
it
should have
hurts
called
you a
you,
lot, Vicky.
yes, Governor or something. His Excellency, yes, Victor Mornington, and see if that would stick.
You'll have a fight with the Emperor.
Yeah, he's normally drunk anyway. I'd win.
That's absolutely true. Saffia, you realise when you do come to film in New Babbage, all the urchins dread it because they have to have a wash.
We have featured the urchins in a couple of shows, yes. They appeared in the Doctor, in the Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson story. I love that. I love the plot of that with Elric and Victor being mistaken for Holmes and Watson.
Yeah, that was a fun one. I loved that one.
And Elric, of course, determinedly playing along and overruling Victor's faint protest that he really wasn't Dr. Watson. That was such fun to do. And I loved the Last Christmas one.
Sorry.
Yes, it is, and I should have written it by now, but I haven't.
Well, you've been busy.
I have been rather busy, yes.
I shall nag you. It would make a change from you nagging me.
Yes. I've also got to do the next quest for the Golden Prim.
I hope everybody's reading The Golden Prim. It's a wonderful, wonderful story told in webcomic form. Shall I type out the address? That might help
please
people.
do. The urchins actually managed to rescue a couple of characters, and I think Victor and I got clean away. We'd headed off and weren't captured, and but it was the urchins who rescued Mr. Merlin.
Yup.
And
They're
poor
extremely-
Biggins.
Oh, Biggins, my heartthrob. But there is a fan club for Biggins, you know.
There is a fan club for Biggins. Biggins has a large following.
Well, he's a large
Biggins-
man.
Well, yeah. Not in height, admittedly,
I'm saying
but in
nothing,
girth.
Saffia.
He, Biggins is the perpetual, hapless, working-class man who is dragged, protesting faintly, into the adventures of all these media folks and middle-class folks, and quite often ends up sort of injured or abused and definitely long-suffering. And every time he sees me or Elric, kind of tries to hide and never quite gets away.
Actually, isn't he still travelling in the blackened mirror? You know,
Yes.
Is he ever coming
yes,
home
but
again?
His brother has taken his place in the Christmas story. We couldn't
yes,
have
that's
a Christmas story without Mr. Biggins, so it was found that he had an identical twin, and that there is in fact Jebediah Biggins and Obadiah Biggins, and our original Mr. Biggins warned his brother not to get involved with Miss Widdershins and Mr. Merlin, but sadly he was unable to avoid them.
Nobody can resist you, Saffia. I keep telling people, don't let her ask you to do anything.
Yes. It was great, but that's been great fun. That whole series has been great fun to do. The Babbage series, and yes, we are due a new one, and I do need to write it, and I even know what the plot is going to be. Well, I don't know what the plot is going to be, but I do know that it's going to be based on a famous Victorian story.
Wonderful, wonderful. I think Magda's got questions.
Yes. Do ask Magda.
Yeah, she's typing away.
I think some people had trouble listening.
No, can you... I don't think I have really. Can you suggest some that are the stricter environments, Magda? I'd heard of Rivet Town, but I think we actually had an article on it in the Prim Graph and it promptly closed down.
I'd certainly like to know about any other ones.
Goodbye, Bixel. Yes, I've heard of Near Victoria. So how would you define stricter as being like no furs?
I think that would be a great shame not to allow furries into a steampunk environment, because at the very least you could explain them as an experiment from Dr. Moreau's Island.
That had gone horribly wrong.
Indeed. Tank has this rule that if there's a good scientific explanation for something, then I think basically you can bring quite a lot in. I think drawing the line at perhaps cartoon figures, but there is quite a lot of leeway, providing you can explain it.
Yes.
I think it is one of the problems. It's not just for steampunk as well, it's for any large genre out there. If you have a large collection of sims, which steampunk has, right? So we've been through it all before. We've got New Babbage, we've got Caledon, we've got Steelhead, who are all roleplay optional, who welcome people in. If another steampunk sim comes along and they go for the 100% roleplay rule environment, it does tend to put some people off, because they'll and it's happened to me. I mean, look at my legs, look at the legs. I'm not human. I don't pretend to be human. I'm nowhere near human.
Very nice legs.
And
she says consolingly, yes.
But I've been to some, and it's mostly science fiction roleplay places where I've been told, no, sorry, you can't come in here, you've got to change your legs, you've got to change your clothes, and I'm like, well, okay. And I can see the point of view from the people that are running the 100% roleplay environments, like 1920s Berlin. There's Fraud Joe, she'll tell you the same thing. They want an immersive roleplay experience. They want to immerse themselves in the surroundings. And the good thing about Berlin is that the period that Berlin is set in, that period, I can't think of any other sims like it. But if you set up a 100% steampunk roleplay environment and people go in and they're told, sorry, you need to change your clothes, you need to change your avatar, they'll just go, oh well, bye, we'll just go back to New Babbage. That's what happened.
I think one of the things is that steampunk in itself is fantasy. What Joe is doing in Berlin is creating a real historical environment, and there's role play going on there, but it's an immersive, real environment, and it would be like breaking the wall to have a furry wandering along the streets of Berlin. Whereas when you're dealing with a fantasy environment, and steampunk is fantasy, it becomes a question of where you draw the boundaries, and people are going to draw them in different places. Yes, I agree. I mean, some steampunk might draw on... There's actually some fascinating things that can be done with the kind of occult cults that came in at the end of the 19th century, like the Order of the Golden Dawn, and the whole kind of people studying Enochian magic. You get figures like Aleister Crowley, but you get an awful lot of people being involved in that. The poet W.B. Yeats, as a young man, was heavily into the kind of occultism and magic that was going on at the end of the 19th century. Now that can feed into a steampunk community, but there are other steampunk communities that basically say if you can't engineer it, it doesn't exist.
Like New Babbage, for instance. I mean, there's a classic example. Everyone knows of Ariel Falcon. She's a well-known avatar in Second Life. She used to be a bunny. Canny bunny, those canny avatars. Now she's a unicorn, a dark unicorn, and she owns land in New Babbage, and what she did to explain the change from the rabbit avatar to that dark unicorn is she is simply a clockwork unicorn. Engineered.
Yes, a Victorian seance complete with ectoplasm would be quite fun.
I think you give me inspiration. I shan't mention the naturist colony either. I've yet to run that past Tank. Don't combine naturism with ectoplasm. No, Joe, I really don't think I want to do that.
No, it would just be
completely gross.
Yes. But yes, so there's a whole lot. I mean, I feel in a way that the perfect Sims for that sort of thing are probably Winterfell Laudanum and Winterfell Absinthe, because they're like dark Victorian. Yes, but nudism and steam does sound dangerous.
Of course, we might just gain a whole new swathe of fans if we do. Not to mention a fashion industry.
Well, I think you might alienate the fashion industry, you know.
Well, there are accessories. There are, necklaces and towels. I better not go any further with that one.
Yes, the girl genius thing is quite common. There's the Baron, of course.
Yep.
And there's also the Jaegers.
Oh, the Jaegers are absolutely wonderful. I think that they're one of the finest creations in the webcomic world. Absolutely. For anybody who doesn't know them, they're how would you describe them? They started off human, and they drank this particular kind of draft, which gave them extreme physical capability, very, very strong. extremely good warriors and very long-lived. I'm not sure they're entirely immortal, but they are very long-lived. Plus, one has to say, a great deal of sex appeal. I mean, who wouldn't want to see a huge mouthful of teeth, you know, and purple or green skin? Well, they think they're sexy, but they very funny.
They think they're very sexy, yes. But yeah, I'm not so sure that everyone else does.
Oh, I do recommend looking at that comic because for me it's a great source of joy.
Mm. It is good fun. So, we've been at this for an hour and a half, and our poor camera woman, if she's still with us, may be on the point of falling over. So I've just had a very interesting question, which I'm going to get to. But if people start to think about their final questions... I'm just checking with the camera team now and seeing if they're still around and
are we talking to ourselves now?
I've just had a message from the camera crew which says that you can actually a certain cat has a great time in Berlin. Someone who comes in as a total cat, a four-legged cat, rather than a furry. But you can actually go in, I think, Joe, as a four-legged cat, can't you? And yeah, be feral. Yes. So we've had a question. Some of the H.P. Lovecraft sims, like Innsmouth, be considered steampunk? I don't think so. I wouldn't say so myself.
I would. The H.P. Lovecraft. Now, if you've been in New Babbage, you'll probably recognise the name, the Dagon worshippers. The Dagonese style of, they were called fish people in New Babbage. Basically, that whole idea was based around Lovecraft, but the problem with pure Lovecraftian storytelling is, yes, there is a slight hint of steampunk in there, but the setting that Lovecraft makes for those stories couldn't really mix well with steampunk itself. The way that, and it was Jimmy Brana and a few of the other long-termers over in New Babbage got around it, is they sort of diluted it down. They took H.P. Lovecraft's general idea of the older gods and diluted it down so it could fit in. There is a way to fit H.P. Lovecraft into steampunk, but if you were a pure Lovecraftian fan and you went into any of the steampunk sims as one of the elder gods, you would be stared at a lot and then asked to leave. Well, you wouldn't be asked to leave, you'll be taken to one side and had a little talk to, because the problem with the Lovecraftian, and I love Lovecraft, love all the stories that Lovecraft made, but they are very dark, very, very dark stories.
As Tara's saying, the problem with strict Lovecraftian storytelling is that it all ends up with everyone dead or insane, or insane and dead. And yeah, I think this is true. Garnet made the point that Innsmouth, by the way, features in the Black and Mirror, which you can all read about at www.theblackandmirror.com, which is a TV series, Treat of Dan, which has had elements of steampunk and also elements of Innsmouth Lovecraftian horror. And diesel punk as well. There's been all sorts of stuff going on there. And even a reference to Shangri-La.
Oh, I had something wonderful to say then. I completely forgot what it was.
Black and Mirror? Innsmouth.
I think it's the image of all the fish people that just completely overwhelmed my brain. There was just one thing I was going to say. I can't remember whose comment it was or what it led to, but it was the thought about strict role play. I could not do that in any way because for me I'm half in and out of, I'm half in this world and half in the other. There isn't an awful lot of difference for me. And the person you see here, apart from the avatar's appearance, is entirely me. I love that sort of subtle interplay between worlds and the fact that you can be yourself here but do things you can't do outside. And for me, a strict role play would mean that I would be very, very limited indeed. And there wouldn't be for me half the humour. And the humour, I don't know if we've mentioned it, is something that runs through the SteamLands tremendously.
Oh yeah.
You get a lot of funny role play, a lot of literary allusion, and just a general act that is a way of being silly that I haven't seen anywhere else. You cannot be as silly as you can in the SteamLands. It's an absolute hoot.
Yeah, I'm with Garnet in that one.
I must say that Joe, I'm really looking forward to your new sim. Because Joe's working at the moment on a 1940s London sim. The idea of being
fantastic.
in the Blitz. London
That
in the
I'd love to
Blitz.
see.
And I'm really looking forward to that.
Ever need a DJ that can play 40s music? I'm your man, Joe. Hello.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, you could do that, Vic. But
Big
it's
band
going to be
music.
another place to live. Good heavens. I can't afford all these Sims.
They only have a Facebook page so far. It's cheap to live on a Facebook page. I just love the idea. I did a murder mystery game set in London once, in London in the Blitz, which was fun. I used to do a murder mystery game played by email every Christmas.
Played by email?
Yes.
Fantastic.
What people would do, they would write a collective story, interactive storytelling, by email, using a list system. And let's see if I can find it. I'm sure I've got a bit still online somewhere.
You and me both, Joe. I'm Scottish. We love cheap as well. Free's even better. There you go. There's a Scottish stereotype for you.
Well, I've got the Yorkshire background, so I'm tight as well. I should admire Saffia's hat while we're pausing.
That's another good thing about SteamPunk. The fashion for SteamPunk and SL.
Oh, isn't it wonderful?
Oh yeah.
And there's quite a range of it as well. And most of the time, I think in Babbage, I'll go about in Victorian clothes, but I do tend to loosen things up a bit for my parties, shall we say. And if people are looking at this avatar at the moment, the fact that I haven't got a skirt on isn't that I'm loose. It's just it doesn't sit very well with the chair. It is not half as useful as Saffia's skirt, which actually sits with her very gracefully. Whereas I had to remove mine.
I'm afraid my old website is gone. It doesn't, yeah. That was a long time ago. I've got it all backed up. Oh no.
Are there steampunks in the community?
Hang on.
I don't know. I don't know anybody that steampunks in real life.
Oh yeah, you do, Mr. Tank.
Oh yes, of course I do. I mean, not in the same country.
Oh yeah, I don't know anybody here in the UK, but I mean, there's people in Steelhead, the real life typists like Mr. Tank, the real life person behind Mr. Tank, went to a steampunk convention not 2 weeks ago to show off some clocks he made. There's a couple of other people in New Babbage who are heavily into real life steampunk fashion design. So yeah, there's quite a few of them.
That's the old Medric Christmas game. I'm not sure what state it's in. Most of these are very, very old now.
Fashion in the steampunk Sims. Can we use final 20th century makeup? Oh, I use makeup all the time. I don't think there's a law that says you can't. Just because you're wearing lipstick doesn't mean you're loose. Although you might be.
That's just creepy. I mention Mr. Tank's name and he pops online.
That's extremely creepy. Is he coming?
I hope not. Oh, that's right. This is getting recorded as well, so Tank can go through the recording and pick out all the mistakes we've made and stare at us. Lovely. This is your fault, Saffia.
And charge you more rent.
Oh dear.
That's another Murder at Christmas, which we eventually turned into a sort of book, so you can read the chapters with the characters.
Oh, fascinating.
Ah.
Well, Tank hasn't IM'd me or anything. He hasn't found anything to object to so far. Says she, hanging onto her chair. I've given him enough grief with my builds.
It's not that we're scared of... Actually, yeah, we are scared of Mr. Tank.
Yes, we are scared of Mr. Tank. Nobody can be quite as dominating by saying nothing.
Just, oh no, he's entered the sim. This is all your fault, Saffia. It's all your fault.
He has to stand there and look and just not say anything. I think, oh my goodness, what have I done now? Did I not mesh this window for him?
Well, we are coming to an end of this discussion.
Oh, what a shame, he says. Why?
I really enjoyed it.
It's been very good. It's been good fun to do this.
Yeah, it's flew in as well, an hour and a half.
I know.
And I still haven't got over being called prominent. I hope you realise that.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, I think it would be lovely to have another discussion about steampunk at Christmas. Because there will be the Christmas Expo. And it would be great fun to have another discussion on this at the Christmas Expo. What do you think?
Oh yeah,
sorry, I
I'd
was
go for
distracted
that.
by the sight of Mosavino Tank. Our beloved clockwinder who's just arrived.
Here comes the clockwinder just as we're wrapping up.
What a surprise. Hello. Oh yes, thank you.
Can he actually hear us?
No, not saying a word about Tank at all. You'll edit all that out, won't you, Saffia?
That's up to Pet Love. I think she is open to bribes.
Phew, he can't hear us. Brilliant.
But you'll be able to watch us later.
So has
Okay.
anyone get any questions?
Yes, questions. We have been informed by the TV crew that we are live and uncut.
Oh!
Oh my word. Oh, Vic, we are in trouble.
Oh yes.
Do you think it's sewer duty for us?
I have received a message that the crew is available for editing, but only for exorbitant fees.
Well, I can pay them in tea and cats, but that's about it. I'm afraid. Vic's the rich person here.
Vic's the affluent hotel owner.
He certainly is, yes.
Yeah, my RP side on my character's sort of turned into some corrupt politician. I don't know how it happened, it just did.
Okay, very good question here from Cody Tabali. What are some books or other out-of-world reference material you would suggest for learning a bit more about steampunk? I would suggest the Girl Genius comics are good.
There
you
is,
guys?
yeah, the Girl Genius comics is one to go through. There's one. Magda came up with a good one. The SteamPunk magazine. There's a couple of good books.
Brass Goggles, yes.
Trying to remember the author's name. K.W. Jeter, who is more known as a science fiction writer, but he was one of the original authors that coined the term steampunk. If you look for K.W. Jeter, that's K.W.J.E.T.E.R. Look for some of his later books, and a lot of those books are heavily influenced with steampunk. Yep, that's him. No, Jeter, that's it, Cody. J.E.T.E.R. Look for some of his books, or for a more generalised look, you're in Second Life, simply look around all the steampunk sims. Walk around, visit them, talk to people in those sims. That's one of your best ways of getting to know at least steampunk in Second Life. The problem, here we go, I'm saying this when Mr. Tank's here, great. The problem with steampunk is if you read steampunk novels, especially the earlier novels by Jeter that was made during the latter end of the decade of the 80s, you'll imagine that steampunk universe, and then you'll look to steampunk in here, and you'll notice there's a large difference, because steampunk as a genre is, and I'm not scared to say this, it's changing. Steampunk as a genre is changing. It's been continuously changing all the way through the 90s. It is definitely changing more now, as more and more different types of people from the real world go into the steampunk genre and put their own blend into it. It's one of the good things about steampunk that it's not hammered down tight, this is steampunk and you cannot do anything else, but it's also one of the failings of steampunk that there's no set rules that govern. Well, there's one general rule: Victorian era, industrial age. Apart from those two, everything's up in the air. But yeah, K.W. Jeter, a couple of his novels, Anubis Gate, that's one that sticks in my mind. That was a pretty good one actually. But yeah, read some of his novels, they're good reads.
Right. Is steampunk in Second Life representative of the wider changes, or is it kind of its own subgenre? Well, there are different varieties of steampunk in Second Life, as we've been talking about tonight. Babbage and Steelhead and Caledon are all quite different, to the point at which, some people would argue that Caledon isn't steampunk, whereas I would say bits of Caledon are and bits aren't. And I mean, where do you stand on Cavorite? Do you see Cavorite as a steampunk material or not? It can be, there's all sorts of debates and discussions about it.
What sort of
it does have
wider
to have
changes?
cogs, yes.
Sorry, Cody, what sort of wider changes do you mean?
Well, the ones I think that Victor was talking about, how it's changed since the 1990s, yeah.
All right, yes. Yeah.
I guess in a way it does, I think, but there are lots of flavours of steampunk in Second Life, some of which are... Yeah,
well,
some of which...
Here's an overgeneralisation, and I'll probably get slapped by people from Caledon and Steelhead for saying this, but here's an overgeneralisation. If you want to look at industrial steampunk, gritty steampunk, the way steampunk was in the mid-90s going into the late 90s, when there was a coin termed in the mid-90s for steampunk, that steampunk was goth but brown. That was one of the original descriptions of steampunk. If you want to look at that description of steampunk, the old steampunk, where it was gritty, it was dark, it was the Industrial Revolution, there was steam everywhere. New Babbage, that's one place you can visit. For a more general version of steampunk, more real world type based, but with a twist of steampunk in there, some sections of Caledon, and definitely Steelhead. The different Victorian-esque / steampunk regions out there represent different facets of the same genre, which is one of the good things about steampunk. If you don't like one facet of it, you can go somewhere else. Don't like that facet, go somewhere else. There's something for everyone in steampunk, there is.
It's interesting that Caledon, that you think would be, which in some ways is the most open, doesn't have children, doesn't have child avatars.
I thought it did.
No, I don't think it does. It never used to. Whereas Babbage and Steelhead both have child avatars with the urchins and the scamps.
I was just thinking, while you were talking about how things are in the steampunk world now, and I don't know what you think about it, the rest of you, but I think since it's gone more mainstream, some of the technological aspects, shall we say, have been lost. You will see a lot of decoration, slapping a gear on something, but there isn't so much of a functional aspect to what people wear, for instance, or their builds. You might get some very beautiful things, but they aren't always things that work. And that for me is a shame. I somehow wish that we weren't quite so well known, because we'd still have that feeling that what we did makes sense within the world that we've created. And it isn't just a fashion statement.
I know that at last year's Relay for Life, the people who'd done the clock took us from Designing Worlds all over it and explained at great length exactly why the clock was accurate and why it worked, and took great pride in the fact that they had a working clock there.
That
this could have been built. This was the New Babbage one, yes. Magda has said there are some children in Caledon, not organised, 1 or 2 in every generation, and one is a professor at Oxbridge.
children in Caledon probably would not have such a hard life as they do
No.
elsewhere.
Less fun. So they don't get to be scamps and urchins.
No, they don't. They'd be much better dressed, I bet.
Yes.
There was one funny comment, and this was going back a couple. In fact, you've seen him in the audience yesterday for the Doctor Who chat. Ezzy McAlpine, Easy. He's one of the former owners of what was the Doctor Who Experience, and he remembers going into New Babbage round about 2010. I think I must have been on holiday at the time of the something, and a group of urchins. I still laugh at this. McAlpine's the sort of person that doesn't fit in wherever he goes. He stands out like a sore thumb. He was confronted by a group of urchins who then proceeded to mug him. And I was like, well, Ezzy, you basically asked for it. You really did.
Oh, that please, Tank. My goodness, we've been going almost 2 hours.
Yes, we had better wrap up before the camera person falls over. Can you borrow them? Well, I'm sure that they would be happy to pop over for a visit. Certainly would be happy to pop over if you're going to hire them.
But yeah, we should really do one of these again for the Christmas Expo.
Oh, that'd be wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Blame the British. Well, I don't know who the British are. Well, got 2 English women and a Scotsman here.
Yes. Okay, we're now at 90 minutes, so I think we ought to wrap this up. Okay, thank you. Thank you all.
Oh, it's been wonderful. A great pleasure.
It's been great fun. Thank you to my guests, Garnet Saltry and Victor Mornington, and thank you to the audience for coming. I hope you enjoyed it. I think the fact you stuck with us till the bitter end suggests that you did.
Either that or they're drunk. I'm not quite sure which. But very glad to see you all.
Yes, indeed.
And thanks for hosting it, Saffia.
It's been my pleasure. And yeah, we'll have to do this at the Christmas Expo.
Love to.